So this week we are looking at commandment number 7, which is the third of the horizontal commandments. The first 4 focus on our relationship with God. We now have these commandments about talking about each other. We're told to honor our parents. We're told not to murder anyone. We now come to the commandment about honoring marriage. We're not to commit adultery. Now, technically, this means that if we are married, we're not to have a sexual relationship with anyone other than our spouse. But even a casual reading of the Bible makes it clear that the directives about sex are more restrictive than that. For instance, sex between unmarried couples is prohibited in Acts 15, in Romans 1, in Ephesians 5, and 1 Thessalonians 4. And Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 makes it clear that it's not just our actions, but our thoughts matter, that it's not just the actual physical act of having sex with someone, but if we entertain that temptation, that is a sin. It's not that the temptation itself is a sin, but allowing that temptation to take hold is a sin. So, look, there's a broad counsel there's a lot of counsel about sex in the Bible. In light of that, I'd like to cover this topic a little bit more. I'd like to talk about it in a positive light instead of simply in a negative light. So I don't want to be in a defensive position. I want to note the grand positive behind the negative commandment. We've been told that we shouldn't worship false gods because there are no such thing, and the personal God is worthy of all our worship. We're told that we're not to empty his name of praise, but we're to speak honorably of him because he is so wonderful and glorious. We're told that we shouldn't kill because we've been made in the image of God. There's always a positive behind the negative. And so we now have this prohibition against adultery. And I want to note the grand positive. I want you to hear that God is very pro-sex, that it is his idea. In fact, I will argue that God is more pro-sex than the most, quote, pro-sex person you can think of. And I'm not certain who to put in that camp. It used to be easy. You could just mention Hugh Hefner. He was the, sort of the archetype of the free love, sex, playboy philosophy. He's dead and gone, and I'm not sure who has replaced him. But what I want to argue is that God is more pro-sex than the most, hookup culture, pro-sex, sleep with anybody, advocate of the sexual revolution that you can come up with. I want to make the claim that those people are actually, they have a very de minimis view of sex. And they have a much smaller view of sex than God does. God has the most cosmic and glorious view of sex of anyone. He created us as sexual beings. In the early chapters of Genesis, we see that God created us as male and female, and different in sort of all the right ways and for all the right reasons. Men have a Y chromosome, broader shoulders, narrower hips, a propensity for spatial over verbal skills, and male sex organs. Women have 2 X chromosomes. They have narrower shoulders, wider hips, a propensity for greater verbal skills, and the ability to bear children. So, full disclosure, I wrote that a long time ago. I don't know when. I just pulled my notes out of my file. As I mentioned, over the last 35 years, I've preached on the 10 Commandments 3 times. And so I am reaching back into previous notes. I always build on what I've said before. I start there, even if I don't use any of it. At least I know where I've been in terms of previous biblical work. When I wrote that, I had no idea how controversial those words would become, and I certainly don't mean to be trying to hurt people or being disrespectful in what I'm saying to people. But at the same time, I want to say that there are differences between men and women, and those differences, I believe, are divinely ordained, and I sort of trust I'm not telling you things that you don't already know. So sex is God's plan, not ours. He created us, all the parts, wired us for pleasure. Sex was his idea. Consequently, God has the best advice about sex. Advice that is wise, sweet, healing, and perhaps a bit surprising. The Bible does not have as much to say about sex as it does about money, power, greed, hatred. But what it has to say is important, and I hope you will be back tomorrow as we continue. Have a good day.